You've found AHO Radio. We're authentic human outliers coming together to help heal the fear of being authentic. To bring back genuine human conversation. No hype, no sensationalism, just honest talk about the critical issues affecting society, affecting humankind. And now, here are the hosts of AHO Radio, John Krotec and Bill Protzmann. And a very good day to everyone on this day before Veterans Day 2020. Hey, John, how is things out there in Florida?
You know, the same as always. We're getting a little bit of rain today, actually, but
yeah, good.
Sunny and warm and humid. And how about you, Rob, over there in Santa Fe?
Well, we're moving towards winter, John, unfortunately.
That means snow for you, right? You get.
We had a big snowstorm a week or so ago. You missed it.
There you go. There you go. I missed it, man. We got rain in California. Hey, Bill Protzmann here, AHO Radio, along with co-host John Krotec, and our guest today, Rob Reider. We've got some authenticity that's like baked in the cake from way back today, people. And I'm so thrilled to be able to interview my good friend. Rob and his wife Barb met me ages ago. It must have been in the 90s at a little cafe in Laguna Beach. We were just sitting there like having coffee and we struck up a conversation. And here we are today, 25 years later or whatever, still having that conversation. Here's a little bit about Rob and then we'll jump in. So there's a lot to say, man. So I'll try to condense it down and keep it interesting, but I want the audience to have a background for you. So Rob, of course, President of Reider Associates based in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's a management consulting firm, and he's the creator of more than 20 workshops given to thousands of people around the world, domestically, internationally. He's written 15 online courses and about 9 professional management books. These are kind of books you'd read if you were an MBA, college textbook kind of stuff. I've read some of them, one on benchmarking, one on nonprofits. This is strong stuff. And the reason that we're talking today is because Rob's also written 6 novels. And each one of them is like a guide for personal and social transformation. They're like little allegories that illustrate how you can do this stuff. And I have a feeling a lot of them come from Rob's personal experience. And that's why we want to get into those, because they're so cool. Rob, of course, has been a speaker, but I also want to say that he's founded Concerned Productions, which is a social issue theater company. And that's a really remarkable thing to be able to illustrate how social issues can play out in real life by replicating them in theater. So Rob's also an entrepreneur, and he's taught, as a guest professor, he's taught entrepreneurism in colleges, and just an all-around Renaissance man. What can I say, Rob? Welcome aboard. Glad you're here. And is it snowing there right now?
Well, we're moving towards winter, Bill, here in Santa Fe. And I noticed John is from Florida, so we probably should have all gone down there and recorded it in Florida somewhere.
Seriously.
Well, it's been warm here. So, yeah, in that great introduction, Bill, we're thrilled to death to have you here, Rob. I just met you about 10 minutes ago. But, you've been a busy guy, and Bill outlaid, authenticity in so many people these days. And you've been doing this for a long time. So many people don't even know what's real anymore,
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. How do you know what's real? What's real?
Well, if you guys remember when we were somewhat younger and we sat at a coffee shop with some new friends and we talked about what is truth. Well, this many years later, we're still looking for that. Unfortunately, the people that are in charge right now don't like the truth. So how do you even know what's going on, who you can trust, whether your representatives are representing you, and so forth? So as Bill knows, we're putting together something called Community Unity for the communities themselves to become self-governing, what we call participative democracy, and basically a movement towards the truth and authenticity. So nice. All of us are right on the same thing. We're all trying to do the same thing. And why do people believe today what they're told? And where are the facts? So my personal feeling, and I know Bill agrees with me, is that we really are on our own and we have to do it our own and we have to find our own authenticity. So I think that's where we're all at.
When you wrote American Scream, there was a great I don't want to call it utopia because it's possible. There was a great, hey, we could do it this way kind of offering from that book. Can you quickly just sort of give us your vision and how that played out in that novel?
Which book, Bill?
American Scream. That was so
Oh,
moving for
American
me.
Scream, yeah. Okay, American Scream was actually the sequel to the Genius Club. And the Genius Club was just guys like us sitting around, actually guys and gals, sitting around talking about what we can do to basically not have the same thing happen to other people in their backstories that happened to us. So they came up with the Genius Club on a lark, actually at a previous elite restricted resort in South Florida for you, John. And it then became, as others came and this got older, it became they would take anybody, you know, just to get somebody to pay them to spend the night and eat the food and all that. So they're just kind of wandering around, mainly old retired people, male and female, people that have, you know, backstories that, you know, can really stagger you. And the one guy, Doug Carpenter's his name, who was a sales manager in Topeka, Kansas, of all places, for 30 some years. He's playing the role of a womanizer, and he looks like a garden gnome. So he meets Thelma Robinson, who is still a luscious 70-year-old woman, and he tries to pick her up, and of course she just laughs at him because he's so ineffectual at this. Anyway, they become good friends, and Velma asks Doug, well, what is it you do now? And he says, well, I'm the president of the Genius Club. And she says, well, can I join? And he says, yes. She says, how many members do you have? Well, he says, if you join us, you can be the vice president. Now we have two members. And from there, they built it up that it became a national phenomenon of going in with the geniuses to help community building, to what we're talking about, basically to create authenticity within the community. So that was the first book, and they came up with a formula that we call Peaches.
Yeah.
P-triple-E, C-triple-H, and that's politics, economy, education, environment, community, housing, and homelessness. And they applied that to the communities. And this is what we moved in with on American Scream that Bill mentioned. American Scream is a fictional account of a small community on the East Coast, basically in Ohio, called Mount Joy, that picks up on the Genius Club and puts this into action.
So these are they're fictional accounts, but as I was reading these books, I could see myself as a participant in them. I don't know at what level, but just the idea of being able to have a voice in a solution that's local, you know, that is built around people that I know in my community is remarkable to me. Well, I don't know why, but it is.
What I'm catching here, and I like your approach, Rob, because I think it's relevant. And what I'm hearing is that you found, like, obviously they're fictional stories, but we're really talking about empowerment here and giving people the belief and the hope that they actually could do something and be effective. Is that what we're doing here?
Absolutely, John. My concept is we can do more on our own than relying on the system we have.
I love that. I love that, Rob. Yeah. I mean, that you just gave me goosebumps, man. That's cool.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. And as Bill knows, we have a website right now, community-unity, which describes all of this is what we're trying to do, not from fictional now, but for reality. Okay, as we say, being more authentic within our communities, getting people to work together. Going back, I kind of know where Bill grew up. I don't know where you grew up, John, but the old neighborhoods. If you grew up in one of those old neighborhoods.
Oh yeah.
You know, basically either heritage-based, ethnically based, religious-based, but everybody worked together.
All the above.
Yeah, and when I was a youngster and my mom had to go out to work when I was about 11, 12 years old, I still had all those neighbors that would take me in if my mom couldn't get home.
Yep.
Or, something happened and so forth. And we've lost those neighborhoods. And we'll talk about the most recent book with Bill,
Yes.
where, a group is forced out of their neighborhood and there's the rush to the suburbs. And in my own mind, the suburbs were, while they may have been great, they basically isolated people. And we didn't have those close-knit neighborhoods anymore. So to me, that's the hub of authenticity, getting people back together. And one of my quotes is,
I love the fact that authenticity connects us.
I'm sorry, Bill.
No, that's right.
Yeah, working together is always better than working against or working for. So that's what we're trying to create. Authentic neighborhoods, bringing them back. Not necessarily based on ethnics or heritage, but just based on people working together. So that's the concept.
Well, and Bill, the educational part of that is the integration of hope back into the system, because you're right, Rob. I did grow up in one of those neighborhoods, and I can tell you this: if I did something that was against the grain or was not in the best interest of the community, somehow my mom or dad found out about it. And it was that sense of community that, you're so right. You are a Renaissance man. You're taking us back to a time that we can remember, but we can also inspire others to help us to get to that place again. I champion that.
And I think, John, of all those people who didn't grow up in those neighborhoods, so they don't have a taste of what we're talking about.
Right.
They have been isolated from birth when you think about it.
It's a great point.
So, Rob, I know a lot of the fiction comes out of your personal experience, and a lot of the skills, the management experience is the inflection for how to make things work. And your idea of education in American Scream, where all the kids in the neighborhood participate as entrepreneurs in the businesses of the neighborhood to learn their skills, that's a phenomenal idea. I would love to see that at work. Did you have that opportunity when you were growing up?
I happened to, I started out in the Philadelphia school system. That's where I grew up. So it's a public school system, a big public school system. And as John was saying, Philadelphia was, or at least when I grew up, a patchwork of ethnic neighborhoods based on heritage, based on where your parents or grandparents immigrated from. But I happened to be in one of those ethnic neighborhoods. So through elementary school, I had a great education. And then my parents, if you can believe this, they lost their house and we moved out to the wealthy suburbs.
How did they lose their house, man?
You don't pay your mortgage bill. You wish.
Oh, okay. So their
That's
business
a good answer.
stopped out. I mean, I didn't realize this. So they basically lost everything. And
They
when was
lost
this?
everything.
In
They moved us to the suburbs. We were the poorest family in the rich suburbs. You guys know what the main line of Philadelphia is?
Oh yeah.
Well,
I don't, but
that's where they moved us to. Okay.
My dad's from Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay. Been plenty of times in Pittsburgh, John, working and just visiting.
And yeah, he grew up in one of those ethnic neighborhoods too, a Croatian neighborhood. And I heard the stories of if you went into the Russian neighborhood or you went into the German neighborhood or you went into any other neighborhood, you literally you learned life's tough lessons. And so, yeah,
you also learned to run back to your own neighborhood.
Fast.
And so, yeah, and I guess maybe it was a little Europe right there in Pittsburgh.
Well, Pittsburgh was pretty much like Philly. It was a patchwork of ethnic neighborhoods. Yeah. And I remember growing up in our neighborhood where there was a big pit between our neighborhood and what we called Little Italy. And most of the big cities in the East had a Little Italy somewhere, probably Pittsburgh as well. And we used to have, stone fights over the pit. We would throw rocks across to them. They would throw rocks at us. We would all yell and cheer if we hit one of the Italian kids, etc. And then I get to junior high, and who's sitting in my classroom with us? All these kids.
All the kids. Right.
So you started to come together. Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then when we moved out to the suburbs, you were completely isolated. And the new book gets into that, where the main character, his family forces him to move to the suburbs. Okay, from Little Dublin and Brooklyn happens to be an Irish Catholic ethnic, but it could be anything, as it says in the book. And it's just black death to him, to not to give up, the life, but to give up the people. So what they find out at the end, it's not making the most money, it's collecting the most people that you might call good friends, like myself and Bill.
Yeah, later in life, I mean, there was a time where you could bring those friends with you throughout your life, and you can't anymore. So for everybody who's listening, the new book is called "Forgive You, Father, for You Have Sinned: Changing One's Prescribed Life to an Authentic Life."
There you go.
And I won't ask you for any reveal on this, but how do you change in this fractured environment where we are now all little islands, or tiny little community islands, instead of being together? I mean, what's the path forward through this, Rob?
Well, me, Bill, the gift of life is to find out who you are. And we spend a lifetime trying to find that out. And what we find out is we are all victims of all of our backstory and all of the propaganda and the messages that people have told us.
Victims of our backstory. That's powerful.
Absolutely. And as John said, what's the real truth? Who are we really? We're a composite of all those people we've known, all that we've met, all of our backstories. Mm-hmm. And, in the book, it says it's really easy. Just change your story or change your mind. But it's not that easy, as we all know. Because
it's a powerful title.
The little worms living in your head, the little worms that come out.
It's a great way of pointing that out, because, you're so correct, and it's a powerful title. And, I have heard it described probably very similar, like we are all a product of these ancestral traumas, these things that have happened. And we sometimes, and this, Rob, you've been doing this for a freaking long time. Sometimes we don't even know who we are. It's so buried deep and so subconscious. And unless we explore that, and we have no, Bill, goes back to your question, how do we change that? And I think what Rob's pointing out is we got to go deep inside. We got to figure it out from the inside out, instead of trying to continue to react the way we've always reacted. Is that kind of what the characters are all about? Isn't that what we're about?
Well, that's what's the book about, John. You put your finger right on it. It's finding out who we really are. We don't have to be that Irish Catholic guy who grew up with all the religious and the neighborhood messages.
Yeah.
Who are you? And this is a character who, grew up poor in Little Dublin and Brooklyn, which is just a fictitious community. And since there was no money, and as Bill said on the title, "Forgive your father, for you have sinned," his father basically walked out on him when he was like 6 weeks old, and became the bum in the back of the bar of the Irish pub. So he's, all of that builds up his story. And basically, our story starts at birth. So who are the Protzmanns? Who are the Krotecs? Who are the Reiders? Where did they come from? That's where you start out with. So as they say, if you win the birth lottery, you might be in the right family. But how many people do you really know that were born to what we would call the right family?
Oh yeah, what is the right family anymore?
Well, that's it. Well, what's the right family for Bill Protzmann? What's the right
one I've got.
family? It's a whole different family. Somebody else got the family you should have gotten, Bill, and likewise. So what do you do about that?
Yeah.
What's interesting? Yeah. What's interesting too, Bill, is what Rob's pointing out with empowerment, authenticity, and with the programs and the books. You are actually inspiring people and educating them that they do have the power to choose. The real empowerment is the power of choice. Somebody can whap you upside the face it's up to you as to whether or not you want to respond and whap him back, or just try to understand maybe why he hit you, or maybe just not touch it.
Well, we talk about the concept, John, of free will, which we all know something about it. But the question is, do we really have free will? You know, our backstory, the messages we have in our head are so crippling that we really don't have free will. You know, what would you have really wanted to do with your life? What would I have wanted to do? What would Bill have wanted to do? And we didn't really have free will to do that. And it's not just the money thing. You know, it's all the other demons we have to fight.
I am so glad you're here. You know why? And we're going to talk about business, aren't we, Bill? But I wanted to go to art school, right? I had a full scholarship for art school, but you know what? My dad said, you know, you're never going to make any money doing that. You need to go to business school. And so I spent time going to business school. It took me like freaking 5 years to get my degree. But when I got into corporate management, and you just laid this out for me, Rob, that wasn't the life for me. I'm an artist. What am I doing in corporate management? You know, so thank you for enlightening me on that, because you just raised a very great question to ponder. You know, who are we and why are we who we are? And is that who we really want to be? Right, Bill? I mean, that is significant.
And that's the major question. Now, I'm glad you brought out your background, John, because I had to work my way through college. I went to Drexel University in Philly, which is what they call the co-op school. You went to school a half a year, you worked a half a year. And I would have taken philosophy for who I was, because I'm basically, you know, I'm a recovering philosopher. Even though nobody listens to me, it's out there. But somebody in their infinite wisdom said, Rob, you better take accounting, because when you get out of school, there's no jobs out there. So I was an accounting major. I worked accounting jobs in the co-op program. And what I learned from that was who I was. It wasn't an accountant. Just like you found, John, it wasn't a corporate manager. So basically, we share something that you and I are basically recovering corporate prisoners. Because I worked in the corporate world until I started my own management consulting firm back in 1976. When my wife, Barbara, said, you've got to get out of there, Rob, it is killing your soul. And you're kind of telling the same story.
Right.
So we all have different stories, but we all have similarities.
Now, Rob,
that's what we want to look at. Yeah, I'm sorry.
This isn't anywhere in your CV, but I know this about you. So tell us, when you made that shift, what significant thing that you did to your identity?
Making the shift from
corporate to,
Well, the last job when I worked for somebody was with one of the major management consulting firms. And I always liked the work because in my mind, I'm predominantly a problem solver. And I think I have the skill set, like you said, John, you had an artistic skill set. I don't have that, but I have what I call the art of solving the problem, putting my finger on there very quickly, and doing it the most efficient way, which is a couple of my management books, but that's another story. So when I married Barbara, my present wife, who Bill knows quite well, okay, she said, Rob, she said, you've got to get out of that firm because their ethics and morality was killing my soul. And I couldn't do it anymore. You know, the mantra there was do whatever you have to get the client, and then do whatever you have to maximize the fees. And I said, well, wait a minute, I think I'm there to serve the client. So Barbara said, get out of there, save your soul, start your own management consulting firm. And, you know, you guys don't know the number, but there's a multiple of what they charge me and what I get paid in salary. So I could work for 1/3 per hour of what they were charging for me with the national and international consulting firm I was working with, and make more money for the year than working for them, and feeling good because I would tell the clients, hey, if you're not satisfied, we didn't sell your problems, feel free, just don't pay me. Now, nobody took me up on that, which says a lot.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing, you know, and you just outlined an interesting concept for me, corporate prisoner. And this belief, you know, in our system where it starts, you know, that's probably debatable, but, you know, think of how many corporate prisoners are out there. And if you, and I know you've done this because you've got all these great workshops, you know, how do we shake those folks out? How do we get and reach those people and let them know that they don't have to be a corporate prisoner?
Well, that was part of my job, John, as you brought up the workshops. Part of my job is always having been a rebellious child. To kind of hit them
No,
with the
not you.
you know, get their attention and say, hey, you don't have to live in that world. And one of my comments, which I always thought was kind of cute, was if you can't get them from the outside, screw them from the inside. And you guys are right there. Okay, do what you have to change it from the inside. So that's what we're really looking at. Okay, you don't have to spend 30 years in the same job, basically spending the same day for 30 years. And you don't have to take orders from these people who everybody knows you're a lot smarter than they are. And
Yeah,
you're much more human than them.
I had a great uncle who did over 40 years in a corporate lifestyle, was a manager and worked himself up through the ranks, so to speak. And at the end of it all, the company went belly up, and all those investments into his pension that he had been doing just magically disappeared. And you know, I'm sure you've heard stories like that and had people, you know, that you've come across that's happened to, but you know, there you go. That's the system that you get it locked into. And honestly, and as you pointed out, we don't really know what the future is, do we? Kind of.
What we have is the past, John, which becomes a fiction because you create the past how you want to see it from your perception. So we talked earlier about what is real truth. What really happened there? We don't know, but we accept the model that's given to us. So we take a job with a corporation and we want to get promoted. And I used to tell my seminar people, who gets promoted? Basically the obedient children. Now, you guys who, some of you may be rebellious children and you see the silliness and, you know, the ludicrous of all this and the life you're living, all right, what happens to you? Either they do what they call, they help you out, or you get a little wise and you get out yourself. Yeah. The thing is, where do you go if this is all that's open to you? So, you know, when you talk about authenticity, how many people do you really know that are really authentic? And to me, that's something that you're struggling with your whole life. Yeah. How to be authentic to yourself first, and then how to be authentic to the world. And the book that Bill brought up, Forgive Your Father book, all right, they all, including his son and daughter, got into a life. One became a lawyer with a big New York law firm. Other became an investment banker because they thought when their dad told them, you know, I want you to have a better life than I have, it meant making more money. And at the end, what they all realized, hey, it's not the money, it's the people. Serve the people. So here we are at another crossroads where we're being told, I govern for all the people. So let's see what happens with that one.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
I'm just taking a breath here.
No, it's enlightening because I've learned so many things just here in the last 20 minutes that you always kind of had a sense of it, like intuitively. And I know that you do these workshops. Rob, how can they get in contact again? Because I know you know this as a philosopher. How can we get in touch with the gut feeling again? And how can we act on our intuition? How do we get back there?
I think, in answer to your question, John, one of the most important things in life is to build yourself a support system. And if you were a corporate prisoner like I was, you know, every other employer to some extent was your enemy because they were trying to ace you and get the promotion before you did, if that's familiar to you.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Okay, we've all been there. So how do you build that kind of support system that encourages you to be who you really want to be? And that's what the Forgive Your Father book is all about. How do you make that movement? And you got to weigh, one of my quotes is, if the pursuit of money is the root of all evil, what is the pursuit of happiness? Or is that the root of all good?
Right, exactly. What's that worth to you?
I mean, people say it, but what does it really mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most people are only happy if they're in the norms of their life.
So Rob, is it scarier to be in the corporate machine, whatever that is, whether that machine is business or education or politics? Is it scarier to be there, or to take a step away and say, no, my happiness comes from something else? Which is the scariest way?
Well, I mentioned a support system. Some people are only happy, when they're getting kudos, and one of them is to get promoted. And you're promoting somebody into a worse position maybe than they had before. But they think they're happy because a little more money, a little more prestige,
Sure, yeah.
and power and control is a crippler in our society. Everybody wants it. Very few people know how to use it. Once in a while, you run into a wonderful boss. I was lucky in one of my first jobs out of college. I had an older guy who was a couple years from retirement. In those days, you had to retire at 65. You didn't have a choice. It was mandatory. And he took a liking to me, who knows why. And he became my mentor. And I remember his messages and his learning, the rest of my working life. What's important in working. And what's important is what you accomplish, not play the one-upsmanship game. And if a corporation or where you're working for the state, you're working for the feds, if it can't give it to you, then as we're talking about today, more than likely you'll never find that authenticity you're looking for.
I'm glad you brought up mentors, because, they can make or break you as a person. And just to relay a little story, I had a guy that read me the riot act one time, and one of my bosses, and I was like just a 25-year-old young manager, and it nearly destroyed me. I mean, because I thought I was more than that intuitively, but he didn't think so. And I admired him. And, he seemed to me like a corporate survivor. We think about being trapped in a corporate lifestyle, but you run across these corporate survivors that, for whatever reason, the mentoring skill sets aren't so appropriate. And there's a way of keeping you down. And then some of these companies, all you're dealing with is corporate survivors, and it can be a real rat's nest.
Well, you brought up some good stuff, which brings things into my memory. But you have to find a mentor, okay? And one of my pet peeves is the innate potential that we're losing in this country, because rather than picking up on John's potential, somebody trashed you, okay? And a mentor has to support you and build you up, and not lie to you, but tell you, hey, John, this is where you need a little remediation. This is what you're great at. This is how to become more authentic in what we're talking about.
Right.
And it's not easy, but I mentioned our website. If you go to that website, community-unity, I have two of my self-study courses I developed just for that. One on entrepreneurship, how to build this, how to start a successful business and build it and keep it that way. Second one is on coaching and mentoring, how to mentor people for them, not for you.
Yes.
And Bill actually worked with me putting together another self-study on the business of art.
That's right.
That's great.
What is an artist? Whatever you do, you still have to look at the business side if you want to survive.
That's such valuable advice, because You're so correct. You have to in order to survive in this type of economy. And, you know, and I think that's what probably scared me the most was my dad, of all people, who I know he loved me, but he said, son, you're not going to make any money doing watercolors. You need to just go to business school. And obviously I knew nothing about business. But you know, if I could have just melded the two, it's never too late. And that's why I'm sure those workshops you offer are just phenomenal for people. Tell us a little bit about those.
Which ones, John?
Which one do you think somebody needs to visit the first time around? If you're a corporate prisoner, what's a good course to go to?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. It depends on who you are and what you want to do. One of them I have is advising and consulting to the small business, which I did for years, because I'd rather work with the small business, even though I had many national and international corporate clients. You know, I really felt good working with a small business guy, what we call a mom and pop business, to help them survive and help them to do well. Because then I got some psychic income, but not the monetary income. And if you help the people, you will get paid back somehow. So, you know, basically, if you're a mentor, as I said, you have to mentor the individual. And even on an entrepreneur, okay, rather than just feeding them advice, you have to advise them on how they can do things and what their strengths and weaknesses are. Now, none of us like to admit we have weaknesses.
I do. I'll jump up.
Let's be honest. We all have those weaknesses. So you need a mentor that can help you, you know, get over your weaknesses as well as feed your strengths. And it's not easy. So you need the right person. So yeah, you can take the self-study course, but then you need to find somebody who can work with you on it.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of astute people listening to our conversation and watching us. And what I'm picking up from you right off the bat, didn't take me very long to see it, is your approach on the human side.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Those things that you learned in Philadelphia stuck with you, and was able to become part of your personality. And like I said, anybody watching you or listening to our conversation can feel that right away. And you mentioned this earlier too, Rob. You talked about people. The bottom line is all about people and how we react or how we work with each other. And it is about people, isn't it?
That's my feeling. Yeah. And as we get older, it's more and more important about people and helping people. And the end of the We Give You Father book, okay, they all get together, Sam the plumber, his wife Sue, his two children, and they get a hold of Sugarman, who does discreet inquiries as kind of a pseudo PI, and she basically takes all of the people that have been screwing them to task and gets big settlements out of them, because she's also works with lawyers, and they take the settlements and they start a company called LAD, Little Dublin Associates for Do-Gooders, okay? And they basically go back to the old neighborhood at the end, and they open up their company called LAD, Little Dublin Association of Do-Gooders, and they start working with the people and fighting the gentrifiers who are trying to, you know, run the old people out of the neighborhood. Right. Basically, they're working to rebuild that neighborhood with the money they got from the people that were screwing them. And that's basically, you know, what you have to look at. What do we need to do? And to me, that's the hub of problem solving. So many people, well, you know, I'll share one of my quotes. It's not what you know that necessarily gets you in trouble, but what you don't know, or what you know, but it just ain't so. And today we are filled with so many messages that we buy them off as truth and factual, and yet that is not authenticity. That's basically living someone else's life. So how do we break off from that?
I'm glad you said that, because, gosh, Rob, we run across so many people. Bill and I have had this conversation so many times where people in a conversation will hear an opinion or hear a narrative, and all of a sudden it becomes the gospel. And for whatever reason, and stubbornness or whatever, they hang on to it, and it creates dissension. And then I can't talk to you because you're from Milwaukee, or I mean, they just pick something out of the air that makes absolutely no sense, but they hang on to it. And these latching onto these narratives that may not necessarily be truth creates the division. So how does a person that's bought into a narrative break away from the narrative? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, that's the task. But let me say this, Jan. Okay, if that happens, and it happens too much today, particularly with our so-called leaders. And another one of my quotes is, anybody can become a politician today, including president, as we have found out. And that's the problem. We are taking people as our authority figures and our leaders who have no skills whatsoever. And do they really represent us? Okay. So, when you say, what do I have to do? If you picked up on that and you embraced it, there was something, what I call the worms in your head, that they touched, that was already there. Otherwise, they couldn't have convinced you that they were right and you were wrong.
So that's not just knee jerking on whenever the worms in your head are triggered. It's got to be something deeper than that.
It's got to touch you somewhere, Bill. Unfortunately, too many people are getting the bad messages today, rather than the good messages.
And they're sold as authenticity. It's like, hey, if you resonate for this, then you're feeling authentic. And basically, you're just being led around by the nose or by the worms in your head.
And what's important is not necessarily how this increases your pocketbook, but how it feeds your heart and soul. And to me, that has more value many times than the money you're going to make. And both of you are probably familiar with Maslow's hierarchy.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So once you can get fed, once you get shelter, once you got the basics, then you move on to what we're talking about here. And then you got a chance, as we're talking, how you can become authentic and how you can find the you that was always there.
I'll put the pyramid up in the video feed so people who don't know can see it. But you're so right, because I've been thinking about how much of our time we spend arguing about food and shelter and what the best way is of doing that. We never even reach to actualization. But actualization, what we all want. And you're not going to buy it, it's going to come from like you said, it's going to come from your desire.
Yeah. And after you've taken care of your basics, Bill, and we all have to. I've never been greedy, and my wife Barbara isn't either. So I've never had to goose my clients to pay me more money. I used to say, hey, I'll do what you have to do in 3 days, and then just call me if you have a problem. I'm not going to milk it out like I used to with the firm I worked with for 6 months and keep billing you every month. Okay, if I can help you, that's what I'm there for. And why are you accumulating all that money? What are these people with all that money really doing with it? So one of my quotes is stop the moaning and the groaning and do something for your heart and soul. And that's really where it's at. And my other theory is if you do the right thing, the money will be there anyway, whether you want it or not.
Right. And what you just described is sustainable. The other methodologies may last for a while, but they generally don't last as long as what you're building. And it's tougher to build it the way you're doing it, because that's true bricklaying. You're building networks with human bricks. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean it in a more solid way. And we spend so much time fighting about narratives and who's right and how much money we make and all this, but we tend to forget the common things, which we've all described, the neighborhoods we grew up in. And we tend to forget those things that probably make more difference to our success as humans and being fulfilled than any of the worms that we're listening to.
Well, and the other thing, John, is you got the message. Okay, very few people make a really good living from art, if you're talking about visual art, which, as you know, Bill's
Or
wife
music.
is a very
Yeah.
competent visual artist, okay?
Right.
But you know, a real art has a heart, a real artist. And while they enjoy their art, the reality is they got to sell some of that sometimes. And you got to give it up. It's not yours anymore. And that's kind of what you really have to look at. What really is it that fulfills me? Who really am I? And we'll spend the rest of our lives trying to find out, who are we really? And John, you got the message from your dad, who said, don't be an artist, you'll never make a living. I got the message not from my parents, but from others. You better take accounting as a major so you'll always have a job, which of course today isn't true anymore. But in those days it was. And what I found out very quickly going to Drexel was there's no way in the world I wanted to spend my life as an accountant. You know, it works for some people. It didn't work for me.
No, your brain's too valuable. You know, if we didn't have your brain out there, we would not be able to touch the lives that you've touched throughout your whole career. And there's probably people that don't even know you personally, but because of how you were able to help your client base, they were able to help their customers, and it gets exponential. You know, I can, with a 20 plus year career or more, 40 years, all these workshops, you have literally touched hundreds of thousands of people or more.
That's right. You don't know who they've touched. You know, you touched 5 people. Those 5 people touched 5 other people. You don't know the multiplier effect, what impact you had on them.
So if you had 1 seminar or 25 seminars or workshops or 1 book or 50 books, the fact is you're putting yourself out there in an authentic manner because of a couple of different things. But the primary one is you want to affect humans at a more base level, in an authentic way, which makes the world a better place. And it all sounds hunky-dory and all this, but it's real. It's real.
Well, you brought up a good thought there, John, and that's sustainability. So you can take the course online, seminar, one-to-one. You can hire somebody as a mentor, virtual right now, etc. But what do you do yourself to sustain whatever it is that made the change in you? And that's your work. Now, one of the things that's really bothered me all my life, especially in this country, you know, the land of the free and the brave, and one of my comments is, yeah, you got to be pretty brave in this country now to be free. But it's the loss of human potential. Because you were born here, we don't even nurture your potential. You got to do it on yourself or your family. And if they don't have any resources, it doesn't get nurtured. And what's interesting to me now, all the TV you watch and all the movies you see now, they have people of color in prominent positions. And they don't even make a mention of it. And how much potential have we lost through the centuries of treating those people as unhuman? Think about it. You know, we have been foolish as a country. And who have we pushed up? You know, the people that were able to work the system, probably not in the best manner, to accumulate all those riches. And
I like how you frame that, because, you know, we are a great nation. We all have come from somewhere for something better. And
Absolutely.
if we did take the time, took a deep breath and said, holy cow, I'm not buying that. You know, we need to pick each other up. What you just mentioned earlier was what good mentors do. And so I think you've actually thrown out a cloaked challenge. You know, I know you're up to something, and you're probably throwing something out there like, how can you go out there today and be better and make the world a better place, and see something that simple or cloaked can make a huge difference. I know you're up to something, Rob. You know, you didn't just get to where you're at because you haven't made these impacts. And I absolutely love the challenge you put out there. You did.
well, my lights go on when I work with John or work with Bill, and I see your potential fleshing out. And I see you becoming more human, okay? Becoming the you want to be. that you were not stuck in your position. And that's basically what I try to do, okay? And it's kind of sneaky, even when I did my consulting and all the seminars and all my online courses, you know, there's always that message embedded there. You know,
That's
what was
brilliant.
you remember the old network movie?
Yeah.
I'm mad as hell and I don't have to take it anymore. Well, how many people do we know that really feel that way? And they feel stuck, as we said, John, the corporate prisoner syndrome. You know, how many people really feel that way? And I think myself and Bill and maybe you, John, we're out there. And one of the things we have on that Community Unity website is let us help you.
Yeah.
And we will do where we can pro bono work, just to help somebody get to where they want to be. And as you said, keep it sustainable.
Rob, what I hear you saying is that the kind of human potential that we've been encouraging is basically earning potential. And we've missed the real human potential, which is, what are your gifts? What is your authentic self bringing to the table?
Who is Bill Protzmann?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day.
Knowing Bill for probably over 25 years, as he said, Bill is just filled with potential and good thoughts. But has he had the support system all along? You know, sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah, that's not a value that we have.
No.
America-wide or worldwide or something. We don't share that value.
You know, and the reason why I got fresh, you know, blue skies and green grass behind me, because what you're saying here, Rob, is you're saying, take a breath of fresh air. And your messaging to me is exactly that. What you've done for me in this short conversation with Bill and myself is you have made me take a deep breath and inhale something that's fresher. Maybe it's where we need to go. Maybe we need to go back to these fresh air moments in our lives.
Absolutely.
We can truly talk to each other without being uppity up or angry or resentful, and just realize that we've got so much potential working together than against ourselves. And it's very inspiring for you. I never met you before, and Bill, I've always spoken highly of you. It's a breath of fresh air, my friend.
Well, I just wanted to share with you how I got into writing fiction.
Oh, great thing. Let's encourage writers.
Absolutely.
But I got into the professional management books. Actually, John Wiley came to me. They were starting a new division. They called their trade division that they sold directly to the Fortune 1000. And they said, Rob, you do all these workshops, you do all these seminars, but you want to write a book with us? So that came to me. That's the easy way to become an author. And fortunately, I had a great editor who I helped him become a senior editor. And then I called him. I said, hey, his name was Sheck. I said, hey, I have another book in mind. Would you be interested? He says, not unless your name is Warren Buffett or Bill Gates. He says, to publish you now, you have to guarantee us a minimum of 5,000 copies will be sold. So I was doing a workshop seminar in Aruba, of all places, okay? And I forget what the topic is, but at the end of the seminar, this disheveled looking guy comes up to me. You know, he looks like he was hit with a bag of nickels over and over again. And he says, Rob, he says, maybe you can help me. He says, I love what you have to say. I said, that's great. He says, well, I was a director with Eastman Kodak in Rochester, which is their headquarters. And 6 months before I was fully vested, they let me go. And I looked like he was 50 some years, just as a guess. And he says, I'm just having an awful time getting a job. You know, as you said, Johnny, he had done the same thing for days for 20 some years with Eastman Kodak. Now he's out on the street. What does he do? And he says, can I send you my paper, Rob? I said, you can send it to me. But if you remember at the beginning of the seminar, I mentioned I now live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I said, while I still have some national contacts, I don't have them like when I lived in Philadelphia. But send it to me. And, you know, if you want to be a concierge at a hotel, you want to work in an art gallery, you want to wait tables at a restaurant, maybe I can help you. And I came back and I told Barbara this story about this poor guy, being downsized, last point in his life, his working life. And Barbara says, why don't you write a book about that? And that's what got me into social issue fiction. The first book I wrote is called The Road to Oblivion, The Footpath Back Home, about a downsizer of a national corporation who, at the end point, winds up getting himself downsized because he basically worked himself out of a job. Everything went offshore, okay? Everything was subcontracted. There was nobody left to downsize but him. And then the rest of the book is, what do you do with your life when it's handed back to you?
Rob, I mentioned at the beginning that the books are allegories, but I think it's closer than that. I think it hits closer to home. And when there's real life story, experience, that just, it gets echoed in a novel that shows people that they can have hope and that there's possibility even in the middle of a situation like that.
And it's happened to thousands and thousands and thousands of
so
people.
Many.
So that book too is what a revelation for a lot of readers. And
Absolutely.
And even though it's fictional, it's based on non-fictional events. And,
yes.
And that which makes it seem so authentic.
Well, as an author, everybody always claims that Rob, it must be autobiographical. And when you're writing fiction, it is always somewhat autobiographical because your wisdom and your thoughts are in that book. So while it wasn't mainly my story, none of them, there is my autobiographical philosophy. Now, you also mentioned my bio, John, and how it rocked your world, okay? And I used to help people write bios to get jobs or to do that for some of my consulting employers, when you look at these, etc. And I used to say, I don't even want to see the buyers. And they say, well, this guy's got a 4-point average. I said, so? I said, what kind of job you want him to do? You want him to do the same thing over and over again? 4-point average is good. You want him to help you move your organization away, then you need what I call a high Moxie index. Does this person really know what's really happening? And that's
Moxie. So Moxie is a word from a few generations back, but
probably Bill. Kids today says,
give it to us in today's language.
Savvy.
I had a dog named Moxie, by the way.
In reality what's really going on. You don't buy the program that people are trying to feed you. You can work through, if we can say it on the air, the bullshit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How do you build that kind of community? And
well, there's one of them right here.
To do.
Well, you're one of them. Bill's one of them. And the people that we've been blessed to meet on this show, without a doubt, are some of the finest human beings that I've ever met. I have met some of the coolest people, most genuine, down-to-earth people with Bill, who we reached out on LinkedIn, but the people that we've been able to talk to, and you're just doing amazing things. And that's what we want to do, is be part of this network that people can tap into. And you've been doing it for a long time, so don't kid us, and tap into that and just continue to grow this.
So what I'm thinking, as you just were talking, John, is maybe we're ready with your network and some of the people I know to build our own Genius Club.
We could. I know we could.
And the name was just facetious. As they keep saying in the book, it doesn't take a genius. All three of us know what some of the problems are today, and you wonder why they're still fiddling around with the same solutions. As Einstein said, this is insanity. Keep trying to solve the same problem with the same solution. It just doesn't work. So maybe as a suggestion to you guys, since you've got the radio show and you already have some network, is maybe we could build a network like that just to keep in touch with each other and have our own mini Genius Club.
It starts
right here.
here.
So much fun too, man.
Absolutely, it is fun. It's fun having your mind worked and saying, my God, we could really do that? We don't have to do it that way? Come on.
Bill, is that another challenge that he's throwing out there? Is Rob throwing down the gauntlet again?
Just a suggestion, John.
No, I get it.
It's a little
You
bit
know,
like the
but
Socratic.
it is something you guys can move on, since you do have the radio show in the network.
Yeah.
Happening right now, right here. I mean, Rob, you're part of it.
This could be the start.
Yep.
As if you remember the Forgive Your Father book, Bill, the only thing we're missing is voluptuous Velma.
Ah.
But we can
Well,
we can probably find a ravishing Rebecca somewhere.
We
Well, I
can make
think
that happen. I'm
all
sure.
three of us have those like close at hand.
Yeah.
That's right. Don't have to go far.
And I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't be here without Rebecca and John. I know you say
Well,
the same for your wife.
We knew you beforehand, Bill, and you know, we both know you were a much different person.
Yeah, I
awesome.
didn't have to change my name to get here, but I'm sure glad I'm here today.
Well, but Rebecca has fleshed out some real good things with you.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, you know, it's nice to have that type of partnership with the ones we love. And,
It's
you know,
finding it, John.
yeah, how do people find out more about you, Rob? And I know you're out there, but for somebody that may have just seen you for the first time, how do they reach you, and how do they get your books? How do they get to your website? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Is it okay to give an email address?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, email, phone number, address. I mean, you want
Well, I
folks
was
to
going to give them
house?
Bill's phone number, but I could probably give them mine. Let them call Bill.
Rob Reider.
But the email is the name, which you can see on the screen, Rob Reider, #1 @gmail. There's also a lot of information, both on myself and Bill, on the Community-Unity website. My full bio is there, the online courses, the list of my books, etc. If they go to the books by Rob Reider and there's a book they want, pretty much all of them are on Amazon, even the management books, which were published by John Wiley and Sons, which most people know of, or something called Business Expert Press. But as I remember, all of them are on Amazon. And also the list of now there'll be 7 works of fiction, all kind of hammering at social issues somewhere. They are also pretty much all on Amazon except the new one. But the 3 social issue books, Genius Club, American Scream, and the Forgive Your Father book, were published by Rowe Publishing, ROWEPUB.com. They can get it from Rowe Publishing, or they can get it off of Amazon. What else can I tell them, Bill and Jim?
I'll put all that in the show notes. So if you're listening and driving or whatever, not writing down, just look for the show notes. And the big way, the primary way to start with Rob, community-unity.org, and it's dash like a hyphen.
.com. Bill.
.com. Community-unity.com.
Awesome. And, you know, and I know that Rob won't tell you this, but he mentioned his bio. This has got to be one of the most impressive bios that I've ever seen. So Rob Reider's the real deal. He is doing things out there that we need to get back to, and that he's been doing them for a long time. Like Bill pointed out at the outset of the show, this guy goes back to the roots, the heart of the matter and the soul of the matter. And all I can say is this, Rob, I'm going to just be, every time I think of you, I'm going to just be breathing in fresh air. And that's something that I can bank on, because if I'm in that headspace, then there's no challenge that lies ahead of me that I can't get through.
And that's interesting, because my best days are when my head feels really clear.
Nice.
And I'd like to say it's every day, but it's been a little trying times recently.
Oh my gosh.
When your head is really clear, I like your concept, John. I'm breathing fresh air, and my mind is working, and I'm on all cylinders. Okay, so that's where you really want to be all the time. So I think we've covered some great ground today. Do we have a few minutes more?
Yeah, we'll give you a couple more minutes. Why not? Let's do it.
Well, I wanted to thank you for not bullshitting and for giving us the straight shot, all about authenticity. It's been an amazing conversation. And I know Bill and I are going to be talking about something here. Maybe we create something out of this show, but I just want to thank you. Thank you for being here with us today, and for all the lives that you've changed and will continue to change. And I'm looking forward to the future.
And if you guys are interested, we can do what they call a mini series.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm always down for the challenge. I love it.
It's
Yeah.
happening here. I got to join you, John, and just say thanks, Rob. What a great
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys. As I say, it's always wonderful to talk to people with like minds.
And we human beings, we generally have pretty like minds at the end of the day. We like to be authentic and all of that. So, my gosh, again, thank you, my friend. And thank you to our sponsors, Music Care and Green Zone Hero. And very soon, #Planet. Couldn't do this without you.
Okay, thank you guys. And
Thank you for joining us on this episode of AHO Radio. Information we mentioned is probably in the show notes, but if we missed anything, please let us know and we'll get it added for you. Subscribe to the AHO Radio channel on YouTube to stay connected, and as always, we wish you health, success, and significance. AHO!